I'm going to get into this as the main topic, and what I did, I was compiled all the evidence I have, or not all of it, but most of it, and I just bullet point, secret underground homes in Midland. That'll be the name of this video right here, and then the screenshot that I added to that was this one, okay? And it was from a Lance Eggleston. He is from here, you know, so this ain't nobody off the internet. And, you know, Lance wrote me on private message. He said, remember, we know who you are. We know where you sleep. We have access to your residence at all times. No one will ever believe your story. We will come again. And I'm like, I don't know who you are. Are you a good guy, bad guy? I mean, who are you? You a gangster, a murderer? Who are you? You know? And Lance writes back and says, you will be silenced, not if, but when. And I just wrote back and I said, when are you going to murder me, Lance? That's one of the many death threats that I got and that I live under with people breaking into my home, you know? But the point here is that, as far as I'm concerned, is obviously Lance knows about the underground homes, the hidden access to my home, and how it's being used for these capital crimes. You know, there's one proof in itself. Okay, I took every one of them bullet points and I put them in a comment and then backed it up with evidence, and that's what we're going to go over. I do that often. Okay, starting with the top one. Okay, a CAD programmer, and that's a computer assistant drafting. Okay, so it's a drafter named Layla Obrian told me that she worked on this underground safe house project, which was finished in 1987 with a budget of $7.35 million. She said they were put in by the Bushes, and at the time, George H.W. Bush was vice president. I have screenshots and recorded conversations with Layla. The Bushes are from Midland, Texas. Okay, and so back in 1987, which is a long time ago, right? That's when Iran-Contra was going on and all that. You know, Reagan was president and H.W. Bush was vice president. And then I've got a print screen. It's not Buddy said, Layla said. Buddy made sure I got a copy of what Layla said. And I spoke to her on the phone too, you know, recorded her. You know, I even asked Layla, I said, didn't you have to sign any kind of non-disclosure agreement or whatever? Oh, I had to sign more stuff on that job than any job I ever worked on, you know. But of course, it's 30 years ago, you know, and now she went offline. So I figure somebody threatened her, you know, and that's what happens. That's why it's important that I take these screenshots and I'm calling people out by name. So, I mean, she can't deny she said it and posted it, you know. I mean, it's a fact, and that's only one person, okay? Don't forget what Lance said. We have access to your residence at all times. You will be silenced. Here's my next one. I secretly recorded a phone call where another woman told me there were 4 3-bedroom homes that were at least 25 foot deep. Each of them cost over $1 million. This is now in a YouTube video called $1 Million Underground Facilities. And I just put the link to this video here. I'm not going to play it. I've played it many, many times. And this is a Google Earth map showing a screenshot of my home. And the other thing she says on there, and here's the link. I'll put it in here when I post this so everybody will get the link on YouTube. But she said they were having pedophile parties down there. You know, I mean, that alone is something I want investigated. You know, I don't want no old men having sex with little kids in my town. You know, I want somebody investigated. If there's underground homes here and they're having sex with little kids down there, I want that investigated. And, you know, and I kept her anonymous, but I provided this name of this person to law enforcement. Okay. Rhonda Denman Rogers told me that an underground facility was a half block away. I took a screenshot for proof, okay? And I'm going to blow this up. Here was the screenshot right here, you know, and we were talking on private messenger, and I said my home's sitting on some kind of underground facility, which is very important, or at least near this facility. And Rhonda writes back, you know, she says, yes, it is. I know, a half block away. And I made this point before. Rhonda didn't say, oh, it's 3/4 of a block. She didn't say it's 2.5 blocks, right? She knew exactly how far away it was from my house. And about a half block away from my house is this empty lot right here. So I'm thinking, well, maybe it's here. And then the other possible clue, because I was told there was 4 of these underground homes, 3-bedroom homes, buried 25 foot deep, cost $1 million, etc., is that my next door neighbor has a water well right next to my fence where it's believed one of the underground homes is at. Okay. And this house at 3900 Westmont had a mortar problem, just like my home had a weird mortar problem. And I believe the mortar problem come from digging under the house. I think that is a clue. There's another home that's across the alley property from that Fairmont Park Church of Christ that also has a water well and has a mortar problem, and I wonder if there's not one of the other underground homes there. But anyway, this was about Rhonda Denman Rogers, so law enforcement can talk to Rhonda Denman Rogers because she knows exactly where it is. It's not 3/4 of a block away. It's not 1/4. It's a half block away. Okay. Judy Criss Zohorzarea, I can't never say her name, told me it was a front page news when it was built, but it was supposed to be salt vaults for oil storage. She said the teenagers working down there said it was houses. I took a screenshot for proof. Okay, now this is a person that is from here. She's still on my Facebook list right now. It's one of the many people documented saying these secret underground homes are here that are now believed to be connected with multiple capital murders. The murder of that little girl, the murder of the previous homeowner, and the attempted murder, a capital murder attempt on my life. Okay, so there's another proof. Okay. During the election for Midland Sheriff last year, I was telling candidate Joe Lozano about these underground homes, and he tells me that they were the hideout for the late Sheriff Gary Painter. I was secretly recording him and made this into a YouTube video for proof. It actually went viral. It's called Sheriff Painter's Hideout. We're not going to listen to the whole thing. I went and found a screenshot news story from KMID, and it's showing meet Joe Lozano, the fourth candidate running for Midland Sheriff. So here's a guy running for sheriff, right? That's confirming these underground homes, saying our last sheriff used to hang out down there. It was his hideouts, what he said. So there's Joe Lozano right there. There's a picture. And it's kind of interesting. It's dated February of last year. That's when the election was going on because Painter died. And I had sent Painter like 27 fact-filled emails. He never replied. Now I believe, okay, now I know why. Because he knew about the underground homes. He used to hang out down there, okay? Midland County Sheriff candidate Joe Lozano says something isn't right in the department, the sheriff's department, and if elected, he wants to get to the bottom of it. Boy, he's got that right. Clean up the swamp. That's what it is. It's a big, filthy swamp. Bring in the DPS troopers. Bring in Texas Rangers. These are the only people that can clean it up because they know how to clean it up, and they do that a lot for other sheriff's department. You know, the bad thing about it, it's been going on for 30 years. Okay, so that was some of Lozano's words right from the news, last year. I recorded Joe Lozano telling me Sheriff Painter used to hide out. Like I said, that was big news. Painter was one of the longest sheriffs ever in the state of Texas. I mean, he was famous, is what he was. Tisha Ann Wilkinson Brumley told me she had friends involved in the oil show parties. She said, they're exactly what you say. There are underground homes. I took a screenshot for proof, okay? So with her name, okay? So there it is. There's a screenshot. Tisha Ann Brumley have friends that are involved in these oil parties. I mean, I quoted it. I also have some other screenshots I used for this, for this one comment here, this guy, Chris Reed, and once again, he posted in the old Midland, that's that Facebook group I was talking about, and he says, when I first moved to Midland working for a multi-billion-dollar oil company, I remember hearing talk of these huge secret parties, okay? Jessica Lee Hadley, she says, I've been to 2,000 oil shows, and I tell you what, there's more than just that one girl that was murdered or raped because she didn't do whatever they wanted to do. Now, that's confirmation, right? And then my friend, the late Victoria McKinney from Hobbs, she passed away recently. She says, I know someone that was brutally raped at the show years ago. That was enough for me to stay away. She no longer lives there, buddy. Moved to Snyder, I believe. That was like 16 years ago. And she goes on and, I've never attended because of the stories I've heard. Some are of prostitutes being available for these oil field guys, drugs. Some are violence, as stated, not a safe place for a lady, okay? And actually, it's my understanding the girl that was murdered, she didn't want to prostitute. That was a forced prostitution murder. And I tried to get Angie to report that, but she was afraid and said high-level police were at the party. That's actually the next comment here. In 2010, my friend Angie McGee Hurley was leaving my home and going to the oil show parties, and she was there in 5 minutes. I knew this because we were talking on the phone while she drove. That could be verified by phone records. This week was when she told me about a young girl that was murdered at one of those those parties. She was afraid to report this murder and told me that high-level police were at the parties. The remains of a young girl was found outside of Midland in 2013, who I suspect is that girl that Angie told me about. There's a video on it, several videos. This one's called 2010 Old Show Party Murder. I have another video called Forced Prostitution Murder, because that's what this is: human trafficking, sex trafficking, forced prostitution. And they're like, hey, you're going to do this and make us some money, or we're going to kill you. And who you're going to call? You know, you're going to call News West 9, ha ha ha, CBS 7, ha ha ha, you think proof, and they're going to report it, ha ha, you're going to call the sheriff, ha ha. He hides out down here. See, she had nobody to go to, and then that is upsetting, you know, and you know, she got a choice, do it or die, and she chose death. 14 to 21. I'm suspecting she's probably closer to 14 years old too. Unidentified human remains were discovered near an oil field location in Midland, approximately 10 miles outside off I-20. Remains were a female, white or Hispanic, 14 to 21, 59 to 67 inches tall. Homicide is suspected. That's a current Crime Stoppers. That right there is enough justification to get to the bottom of these underground murder facilities, these rape and murder facilities, and there's plenty of evidence to justify it. The young previous owner of my home, Mike Lawhon, died on October 12, 2008. He was 27 years old, 2 little boys. The week before the 2008 oil show started, that's when he died, the week before. And isn't that interesting, since in the backyard's an underground home where they're having oil show parties, right? The Odessa American posted a death notice saying he died in Fort Worth, but then 4 days later posted a second death notice and changed the location of death to say he died at his residence, which was here in Midland, of course. This confirmed what a former neighbor, Marilyn DeLuigi, had told me twice. I've suspected he was killed so they could use his home and the underground home in the backyard for the oil show parties. The 2 death notices can still be found with a Google search. And then I have a video that I made called The Suspected Murder of Mike Law and the Previous Owner. This is right from just Googling it, you know. Odessa American, here's a death notice. It was posted on October 14th, 2008 for Mike Lawhon. Said he died in Fort Worth, okay? And then all of a sudden, 4 days later, they posted a second one on the 18th, and they changed the location of death to say he died at his residence, right? It was for sale at the time. I'd already looked at it. I'd actually already bid on this home at that time. This was his residence. You know, have you ever seen anything like that? You know, obviously, somebody at the Odessa American knows something about this, because that's not an accident. The computer didn't automatically change the location of death to another town, right? And then you get all these people saying that he died in this house, right? And so, I mean, it's just nuts what's going on here. They're literally killing one homeowner after the other, okay? Another woman told me to look up my address of 3802 Fair Circle on Google Maps. And when I did, I see a large building in my backyard on the map screen, which can't be seen from above ground on the satellite screen. Obviously, this is one of the 4 underground homes. And this is kind of interactive. You know, I created this because you just go to maps.google.com, put in my address, 3802 Fair Circle, Midland, Texas, and you know, and then you see the map screen first, right? And it's real clear there's a large building in the backyard, large bunker in my backyard. Here's my home where I was ambushed and shot right here, 3802 Fair Circle. Well, in the backyard's a large building, but you switch to the satellite screen and it's not there. You drive down the alley and you don't see it there. But if you go look right now and look up Google Maps, and you'll see that there's a large building. Well, I've got multiple people saying there's underground homes here. I believe that's one of the 4 underground homes. I believe that's where that little girl was murdered at the 2010 oil show party that Angie was at. She was driving from my home around to the Home Depot store, going underground, coming back over here to the oil show party, you know, and that little girl's told, oh, you're going to prostitute or die, and who are you going to call? You know, you're going to call the police? You know, who are you going to call? And then here I just dot points of all these people documented of saying that the underground homes are here. Ricky Ronaldo, here's a whole nother person law enforcement talked to, told me that him and his brother used to go in the tunnels under my home when they lived here. I took a screenshot for proof. That's why this is not Buddy said, Ricky said. Buddy got a screenshot. Ricky said it. Facebook logged it. You know, it can be obtained, verified by a subpoena. It's an absolute fact. Law enforcement needs to talk to Ricky, right? And what I did was take another Google map. This one is from Google Earth Historical Maps, okay? So you go back in time around the time I was shot in 2012, and you look, here's my home, okay, and here's where the underground home is in the backyard, okay, and then right here coming out of the Home Depot store, see where the ground's cut? The asphalt's a different color. You know, that's where I believe that a tunnel was going, and then they were parking in the Home Depot parking lot, coming over here, and then going underground, having oil show parties, you know. I was at Home Depot telling my story to a clerk one day, and that clerk says, if you happen to see a lot of cars in the parking lot late at night, it's because we're stalking. You know, and I hadn't seen it and thought about it. But, you know, what she's telling me is, hey, well, you know, when they're having the oil show parties and all these cars park out front and they go underground and come through this tunnel over here, then, you know, that's the excuse they were using. That's how they were covering it up. And somewhere there's 3 other homes, because there's 4 underground homes, right? Next comment. In January 2012, I contacted the DEA and I reported a suspected tunnel to my house, but they didn't look. And 2 weeks later, I was ambushed and shot by somebody under my home with burglar alarms going off in my attic. Absolute proof shows I was not shot with my gun. Now, homeowners all over Midland, Odessa, Texas, and other states are documenting reporting people in the attic. How to Get Away with Murder is the video I did, because that shows the room that I shot with, shows the evidence, the ballistic evidence, and that's where I use this here as like the size of pellets removed from my foot were 2.5 sizes different than what was in my gun. Okay, so ballistic evidence prove I wasn't shot with my gun. All of a sudden, the lies that Buddy shot himself, that's exactly what they are. Somebody under my home shot me. They shot me directly at an artery from point blank range, okay, with my phone lines cut. I was supposed to bleed out and die, and that was good. And then they could rule my murder an accident. That keeps them from getting the death penalty, and it added $500,000 to life insurance, okay? The surgeon was documented saying a large amount of plastic was removed from the wound. Well, I believe I was shot with a handgun, a .45 handgun loaded with a special bullet called the Glazer Safety Slug. It's a plastic tip, pellet-filled bullet. See plastic on the top, pellet-filled bullet. Well, the size of pellets matched the size of pellets. A woman named Layla Rogers, I documented her telling me I was shot with a .45 handgun, and that fit the space requirements, because there wasn't enough room for me to be shot from point-blank range in that tiny room with a 12-gauge shotgun, and many people said I wouldn't even have a foot if that had happened, right? They shot me with a special bullet to make it appear that I'd been shot with my gun, and you know, with my phone lines cut, they were planning on me dying, and they could call it an accident that would give them this house. At the time, I was contacting law enforcement, I was tear gassing my attic, and I was a threat to their underground crime operation. Okay. The police report for the night that I was ambushed and shot showed that Lieutenant Dickey was inside my home at 11:05 when he wasn't seen arriving on the front security cameras that had seen the other law enforcement officers, Woodward and Naylor, arriving 4 minutes earlier. Since all of my other doors were secured with extra locks due to the crimes I'd been reporting, I knew that he had came into my home from the now removed trap door that the ex-wife had already told me about, and I had been shot from. Okay, so I know where I shot from. We know I wasn't shot with my gun, right? So we know where the shooter was at, you know. Well, where is it now? Well, they covered it up while I was in the hospital, you know, because their murder failed. You know, that's what happened. Here's on the security cameras, it's time-stamped when Woodward and Naylor shows up. That's a Martin County sheriff shows up first, and this is Midland County. Nobody's ever explained why a sheriff from a whole different county's at my home minutes after a premeditated capital murder attempt, right? Followed by Mike Naylor, who's no longer alive. They named the highway after Naylor. Oh, he's a hero, right? He was a secret police that I had a reward offered for 6 years. It took 6 years to get them identified. You know, a private investigator finally identified them. I didn't get this police report until 7 years later. It was obvious why they illegally withheld it. It contained incriminating evidence, and part of that was it time-stamped Lieutenant Dickey inside my home. There's a picture of him. So he's inside my home 4 minutes after Woodward and Naylor show up, and he didn't come in the door, okay? And all my other doors secured. That's how I know they come in from the underground trap door. The ex-wife already told me about, and for when I've been shot, it looks like it was police that tried to murder me in my home. There's a longer story than that, because now we know that there was a burglar trapped in the guest bathroom, and I believe they were working with the burglars, breaking into my home and all the other homes, and when I trapped that burglar, they couldn't arrest them because that was their friend, and they're part of this criminal enterprise that's breaking into all these homes, all these people reporting people in the attic. Another Midland friend told me that a lot of people have been talking about the underground tunnels here. She said there's a game room where all the high officials go to, and you bet money, and you know win money and whatever else they do down there. I took screenshot for proof, and I have a video called Developers Conference, okay? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Here's the message. I kept her anonymous because a lot of these people, they're afraid, and they're rightfully so. You know, we have a police corruption problem, and we have some killers that are free, okay? And they're murdering innocent people inside our homes, you know. And so, but that, you know, there it is. High officials go and bet money. Well, that kind of tells me that, hey, this was an illegal casino, you know, game room. That makes a lot of sense that's what was going on here. That makes sense. That was what happening at the oil show parties. You know, they were gambling, you know, and gambling, prostitution, drinking, drugs, etc., killing people and raping and murdering little girls that won't prostitute. You know, that's what they're doing. The Developers Conference, the ex-wife had told me in so many words, a lot of people were here on the night that I was shot. Okay. And so, you know, I'm like, who would that be? You know, so I'm looking, I'm Googling, I'm trying to figure out what would bring a lot of people here, you know, for this weekend that I'm shot. And I find out that Midland had their first ever developers conference. So basically all these wealthy people from out of town, developers, okay, because they put in like a steakhouse here. The Synergy Theaters come in because of that conference. The Saltgrass Steakhouse was here. Them people were here. Oil companies were there, right? We had our Chamber of Commerce and then our City Council and Mayor, you know, and basically all our high rollers. See the high rollers? With all these other out-of-town high rollers. And I'm thinking, I wonder if our high rollers, you know, has this multi-million-dollar underground casino brothel, right, that where no laws apply, protected by secret police gangs, right, that, well, maybe they took their friends, oh, let me show you what we got down here, you know, and all of a sudden we got some high rollers here. One of the people that was here at that developers conference was the Secretary of State for Texas, Hope Andrade was her name. And the question's been asked, I mean, because they could easily check the flight records and see how many of them people flew back, you know. So possibly that was some of the high rollers that were here, and now they're a witness to the capital attempted murder on my life, okay? And as I was saying a while ago, I trapped a burglar, and so then that, you know, it become a dire situation for the criminals that are breaking into homes. On the night I was ambushed and shot, a large group of police that were seen inside my home on the security cameras, which took 6 years and a $2,000 reward to get identified. 7 years later, it was found out there was a police report that had been illegally withheld, and it showed that 6 of the 11 police officers had their names omitted from the report, and 2 of those are now dead. That would be Sheriff Deputy Mike Naylor and Midland K-9 police officer Chad Simpson. And they were caught on camera, identified by the private investigator, and their names were missing from the police report. Omitting evidence on police report is a felony. They're falsifying a government record. But here, all crimes are allowed. I mean, it's one crime after the next crime after the next crime. I have a video called Pictures of the Sacred Place, and that showed they tried to disable the bedroom camera, and they accidentally started it. They never planned on getting caught. They were withholding the police report, and so there would never be any proof that they were in my house planting evidence and stealing evidence and staging the crime scene of this failed murder, right? But they accidentally started the camera. That's what's in that video there. Pictures of the secret police. You know, you see one picture, Rosie Rodriguez, the lifelong friend of the ex-wife that I mentioned earlier. She's leaned over my nightstand where my stolen cell phone was planted, okay? That cell phone had been stolen before I was shot, and they had cut my home phone line, stole my cell phones, and then shot me from point blank range, by surprise with a .45 loaded with a Glazer safety slug, as I said earlier. I was supposed to die, okay? But God saved my life, shot, threaded the needle, okay? Well, anyways, I found in the police reports, and this is Rosie Rodriguez right here. That's the dirty cop I was talking about that caught perjuring herself in court, tampering with evidence, etc. She writes on the report, Buddy said his battery was dead on his phone. That's why he called out. But I never said that. That was an absolute blatant lie. I had the cordless phone in my pocket because my cell phone had been stolen, and it was fully charged because it sat on the charger all of the time, right? She knew that they stole them phones and cut my phone lines before they shot me. It was premeditated, capital attempt murder. They planned on killing me, trying to make it look like an accident, and then using the special bullet. He shot himself with his own shotgun. Oh, he's crazy. He takes people in the attic, And of course, at that time, I didn't have homeowners documented all over the place reporting people in the attic. And 6 years later, the private investigator collected $2,000 and identified all 11 of them. Rosa Rodriguez, April Chandler, Tony Dickey, he's the one inside my house. He's a lieutenant. Greg Chatwell, Greg Nelson, Marty Barrett. He's a crime scene investigator, the one who picked up my gun. There's another piece of evidence I didn't even mention. Marty Barrett did not check in an empty shotgun shell into evidence. And it would have been in the gun that he picked up with the live shells that were in it. Okay, so that was just more proof that I wasn't shot with my gun. Okay, Chad Simpson, he's the one that's dead, that Midland K-9 police officer alleged to murder his wife, killed himself 2 months after Naylor died. Mike Naylor, the second one to show up without being dispatched, right? And then he died, right? Here's a Mark Gilliam, Michael Glick, and then John Woodward, a sheriff from a whole different county. Now he's a convicted felon. Interestingly, he was married to a reporter for News West 9. And of course, News West 9 has never reported any of this incredible news here. That's so important for our community, right? On July 2nd, 2019, I showed DHS agent Paul, where I believe the tunnel was located behind the Home Depot store and aimed directly at my home. 2 weeks later, the ground was dug up and concrete was poured. I made a video of concrete coming off the truck. This tunnel is believed to have been used by the young girl that was murdered at the 2010 oil show party. And they were covering up, and I believe they were covering up the capital murder of her and, of course, the guy before him. Maybe there was DNA evidence in that tunnel, okay? So here's what I showed earlier. Here behind Home Depot, you can see where, that's where I showed the DHS agent right here, and I showed him all this evidence. I gave him a 3-ring binder filled with evidence, a flash drive, and then here, 2 weeks later, they're digging up the ground, pouring concrete, right? I believe they were trying to fill in the tunnel that I showed them to cover up the capital murders. About 2 weeks after this, the U.S. Congressman Mike Conaway from Midland, he announces he's retiring. Come to find out, his brother-in-law used to live across the street from my house. Let that sink in. Okay. And then 3 months after I got this video of them pouring concrete that I believe to cover up capital murders, the Secretary of Homeland resigned. Nobody said anything about that. 6 days after that, Secretary of Energy Rick Perry resigned. Rick Perry was governor of Texas when these oil show parties were going on. And I'm suspecting these oil companies, the multi-billion-dollar oil companies that were having the oil shows, they were leaning on the Secretary of Energy. You need to cover that up, Rick. You need to go pour some concrete. We don't want anybody to find out about that little girl being murdered because she didn't want to prostitute, and they did it, and then I got a video of it. That's what I speculate. Joe Marless told me that I had two choices. I could either move or meet God early. Do y'all understand what Joe is telling me here? It's either I move or sell my home is what that means, or I'm going to be murdered. That's what it is. So you need to move. I only see two options. You see God early or move, and that's only one. I've had so many death threats you can't imagine, Lance Eggleston, that's where I started it with right here. And, because I could have chose any of them. We have access to your residence at all times. No one will ever believe your story. We will come again. How many hundreds of times have I posted videos of burglar alarms going off in my home or security lights in my attic going off, right? Yeah, they have access to my home at all times. How many times I posted saying they're poisoning me in my house? You will be silenced, not if, but when. That's a pretty clear death threat. That's a crime, but as I said earlier, all crimes are being allowed right here, and here we go. My very last one. More people than I can count have asked or ordered me to sell my home and move while living under the threat of death. It's easy to see that they've been working with these corrupt police who look the other way while the crimes are being committed to terrorize me and selling my property. That's a violation of the Hobbs Act. Why do they want me out? because there's a secret underground home in the backyard where they're having oil show parties and where a young girl was murdered at in 2010. And there might have been some high rollers that were there, okay? And so this is an old one. I mean, I get these. There's rarely a week goes by. Somebody, why don't you move? Why don't you move? Why don't you move? You know, or it's, you know, real rude stuff. You need to move, you know, move or be murdered, you know. And see, every one of these, that's what this is. Move, 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 move. It's over here. Move, move. And these are all older. Sell and move the F out, you moron. See, insults, you know, and you know, here I'm a crippled survivor of a home invasion murder attempt. Move, 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 move. The other thing I put in here is a list of the death threats, you know, just some of them that I got, you know. Here's Erica Camille. Fast forward 2 weeks and Mr. Buddy Webb's nowhere to be seen. Nobody's seen or heard from him in several days. Police are looking for leads in his whereabouts. I'm going to skip to Austin. He's going to call in a welfare check or something on me. Here's Kathy Backus, and he's going to wind up being in a hole, okay, talking about me. Randy Wallace says, you better stop worrying about it or they're going to get the snitch. So if you report somebody breaking in your home with guns and shooting you by surprise, then you're a snitch? I don't think so. You know, Lance's I put in there, of course. And here the Hobbs Act. And the Hobbs Act basically says a group conspires together to terrorize a property owner into selling their property. That's against the law. It's racketeering. You know, that's what it is. It's racketeering. And it's often used in public corruption because it works when they break into my home and I report that to the sheriff and to the police and they do nothing about it. And the reason they do nothing about it, because they're trying to terrorize me into selling my property, right? Because there's an underground home in the backyard. It's going to expose the murders and all the crimes and all the other homes that are rigged, all that. They desperately want me out of my home, dead or alive. I think we can all agree to that. This is Buddy. I mean, I don't know how much proof does it take, right? How many people, how many little girls do they have to murder before we're finally going to get some real law enforcement here? Y'all, please share this. It could be your daughter they murdered next.